I'll start recording up. All right, who's eating some good food though? My son made me a PB&J sandwich, so you know I'm set there. But does anyone have some other questions? So this is free time to ask.
Yeah,
whatever.
here you can go ahead and do whatever you want. I'm gonna take a little break. I'm gonna be right back and get something to drink and be right back.
Well, Ben, you just have to tell me you want to unmute yourself. That's what I was just saying, is you just raise your hand and tell me, and then I'll find you and unmute you. So Ben, there you go. Now you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, great. I was just going to answer your question about what I'm having for lunch, and we had a company picnic a few days ago, and they had way too much barbecue, so we just sent everyone home with some brisket and chicken. It's good stuff.
Are you in the South?
No, I'm in Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
So we're not known for our barbecue, but it's great to have it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for chiming in. Guy, did you let me find you, Guy? I know it's a surprise. You have a question. I'm teasing you. Guy is often on our free Friday calls. Where aren't you? I know this is alphabetical. Are you? Is your name something else there? Did he disappear? Why don't I see you in here? This list is all alphabetical, and for some reason, let me try to search. You're here. Okay, I don't see you in. Oh, there you are. All right, whatever. Ask to unmute. I'm gonna lower your hand too. Oh, because you raised your hand, it put you to the top of the list.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So where I am with my own stages, I'm just learning about object-oriented programming, because I'm not a programmer and I'm finding it quite exciting. But it is a transition. It is a transition. It's like learning a new language. I'm now using Studio to do my dev work in.
AHK,
Yeah. Is there a guide to? I want to move to VS Code. Is there a Studio to VS Code kind of user guide or little something or other out there that I can check out?
No.
Okay, that's a straightforward answer. I mean, you send me VS Code and GitHub, that side of things, but is there a VS Code tutorial that I could that I might find useful?
Well, I've told you there's the VS Code webinar we did, and then we did at least 2 others teaching. We walked through it with Shin, setting him up, who's Spanova, the Spanova channel. And then I forget who the other person was, but we recorded them, and they're really good lessons on setting up VS Code and the power of the Git integration, which is
awesome. Now, you sent me a link to VS Code and Git. Is it only one webinar, or should I be looking at a whole family of stuff? Can you point me at the right direction for you?
That's why I sent people to the VS Code on the Automator.
Okay.
We have a lot of links to the webinar, to the different.
Okay. I need to go to the VS Code and Automator. Perfect. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and it I think I just freehanded typed that. I should have checked it, but it yeah, we have a lot of training stuff on it, and yeah, it's very powerful. And by the way, Chad Wilson here is Maestria. He's the author of AHK Studio.
Yes.
And he's on the call here too. But yeah, it's when you start working with the Git integration, that's where VS really shines.
That's what I'm hoping to do, and that I've got Studio throwing some curveballs at me. It comes up with errors sometimes that I don't understand, which is a Studio thing, not a my code thing. But
and I use it day in, day out, and I never have an error. So
Yeah, I have an error specifically when I try to refresh the boxes on the right, which refresh the libraries.
Oh, and there's a problem in one of your libraries that has
Okay.
an error.
Well, I can't figure out which one it is. Refresh Project
Actually-
Explorer, and if I hit both, I get an error, an
No.
AHK structures error.
It'll
So-
tell you.
so- First of all, when you get an error being thrown like that, it not only tells you which file is the one that has the issue, but also the line in the file what has the issue. So
Okay,
if you
it
get a
says-
message box, if you get a message box, try to read the whole thing in there. I'm very
Okay,
Well,
can I
you
show-
know what? Yeah,
can
you
I show it to you? I've got it on the screen.
Well, what I was going to tell you was because a lot of people don't know this, and it's stupid. Any message box with auto hotkey, you can highlight it and hit Control C, and it copies the content of that message box. Right? Like a lot of people don't realize that it's stupid, but it can come
Yeah,
in.
and not only is any message box. It doesn't have to be an auto hotkey one.
So I've just put it in the chat. That's the error I get.
It says usually at line 1. So the first line, and it has, it looks like HTML or something like that. That is not auto hotkey code. Or well, no, it says continuation section too long. So what happens is you're trying to set up a variable that is very big into, well, with a continuation section, and auto hotkey has limits on that.
What is AHK structures.ahk? Is that one of my libraries?
Yeah, it looks like one of the libraries, AHK structures.ahk, seems to be that you're including that file, and that file has a very big
Studio.
Okay, well, I'll go and look for that file and deal with it. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yes, that is something, Geek Dude. You just said something I know, and it is something that makes a little bit difficult the sharing of code, because some programmers like to just be so efficient that they remove all meaning from variables, and you have this very good code with variables named S, K, A, I, and somebody who might not know a lot about auto hotkey might find it daunting or complex or not even try to understand it. Yeah, brevity is true. Aaron, you are right. It's not the same. But what I'm referring to in this case about efficiency is about efficiency of typing. So they're really fast at typing, like they just go ahead and S and do this, that, and in the end, for other people, it is complex to share the code. It is complex to understand the code. It is complex to maintain it even. So then they have it in a way that it makes the growth of the community a little bit slower, but I understand why they do it. And I understand that they are, quite. Now there are other styling choices it's just that. It's just styling how they put the code. I have my own style. And for example, there are some people who like the brackets in a specific location, some others don't. And there are decisions that are made. There are reasons why you do that. And just as a quick example, like for example, let me just do this real quick.
So I'm going to make a confession here.
Yeah.
Something I've never told you is I'm one of those guys that top curly brace should be on the line above, right? And you always do the next one, and I've never told you this, but I'm like,
that annoys you, right?
But what I will say is after like a year of looking at it, now it doesn't bother me anymore. When
that much, it happens to be the same.
Now I'm like, whatever, and I get.
Yeah, and because of working with you, I decided to do something. There's something. When I define a class, my class, I put the bracket right next to it, or a function. So for example, my function, I put the thing in there. Same happens to the switch statement. I do it right next to it. Now, when I do an if statement, if true, I put the brackets below it, and there's a reason for that. I do those kind of things, and it is because I want to be able, so, or false. So what I want to be able is to remove conditions at will without affecting the code. Because what happens is sometimes, let's say that you have the bracket right next to it, you cannot remove this if statement because the code is going to break. That's what happens. Or for example, if you remove this code, now this one is okay, but the bracket is, you are left without a bracket. So in all those things that I have conditioning, like for example, while true, I want to be able to remove condition, especially if I have multi-line conditions. I want to be able to remove conditions without affecting my brackets. That's the reason why I do it. Now, in situations where I don't need that, like a function definition must always be there. I cannot just simply remove that function definition from there. Then I put the bracket right next to it because I understand the concept of kind of like compacting the code and stuff like that. But again, this is just styling choice. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference. For some people, but it annoys the hell out of the other person, that's for sure. Like it annoys the hell of some developers.
But once you realize it's much more of a preference than it is a right or wrong answer.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it is a preference.
And I see, it looks like Maestri, I don't see him right now, Chad. I think he left, but he used to be one of those people that would write the most densely possible code you could have. And now that he's been programming, I think C# for a while, he actually told me he stopped doing that. He actually breaks it apart and keeps it separate and keeps it just much more, intuitive to when you go to read it. Which
I like the way you can have multi-lines, that if statement, where you can have the conditions of different lines.
Actually, yeah.
That, I mean, it makes it easier to read sometimes, rather than having, if you go like 5 conditions, putting them all in one line. Can you, if you leave a space after the if, a blank line, it breaks the if, does it not? Sorry, you've gone muted.
It doesn't break it. It is something that you can do. Actually, the if statement can have spaces until the next thing. And basically what you said, let me go ahead and show real quick an instance of that. So I could go ahead and open this thing. And I have situations in which I have 3 different conditions. Let me make this a little bit bigger.
And they're all long conditions. They're not just,
right, that's the problem.
If true or false,
Yeah, exactly. So that's basically why I do that. And what I have right here is that you have an if condition. If the first statement could not load the picture, and that picture is being loaded in a specific way, and I was able to read this particular key on the registry and the icon is good, then I go ahead and perform some action. So there's 3 things that are dependent on one another. They're very long. Having them in just one big, huge line is a mess.
Yes.
Especially, and notice that I grabbed this thing and put it in a variable.
Yeah.
Again, when I'm coding, I'm not coding for
density.
No, well, like I'm not coding to make it easy, like very small code. I'm trying to make sure that whatever I coded is actually readable for me and easy to maintain.
Correct.
6 months from now. When I grab this code Absolutely. 6 months later, I will understand exactly what is going on. And if I just don't want this condition, then I can just go ahead and comment that out. And my code is not gonna break.
So there is
that's the reason why I do it that way, even though it takes a lot of space. People don't like that.
But what's a penalty? There's no penalty for space, is there not? When it's compiled, compiled, it's the same thing.
When it's compiled, your long variable names don't matter. If it is just 1 letter or 10 letters or 50 letters, doesn't matter. It's going to be converted to ones and zeros, and it's going to be as fast. Yeah. It's just that people don't feel it's easier just to say S equals 10 and K equals 24, and then just go from there. But in the end, they're making a little bit of a this favor to themselves and to other people, because it's not going to be easy to understand 6 months from now.
You're right.
That's the only
Unless it's the only
thing.
loop, unless it's the only loop in the
For
program
me-
and it's in a 5-line program.
For
Yeah.
for me, even if it takes like 10 lines to explain something, if I can make it in a way that later on I know exactly what I'm doing and I can modify it easily, then I don't care. I know
Yes.
that it is just going to be okay. And when I compile the program, the user is not going to know how I coded that, you know?
But I think it's really important, though, we distinguish between style of how you write code and the actual code that you write, because some code you write will be more efficient than other code, but it's not how many lines you broke it across, it's the approach you took, right?
That is right.
And sometimes, which I know Aziz and I, for the most part, we're very independent of like, is this really going to be faster? You know, as far as it executing, is it going to be faster? It doesn't freaking matter. It's how much time does it take us to write the code that really matters, right?
And fix it
But
later when they say like, you know what, this
But there
doesn't
are
work.
times, you know, when you're doing something a lot where efficiency does matter, right? And where you want to take more time optimizing your approach.
So another question for you is I've been working on an option of double clicking on an edit and it formatting the text in a particular way, it recognizing if it's an email or a phone number or whatever. And I'm thinking, rather than double clicking on it, can't I do it that it does it as it types? Now, is that possible? Because I got a raft of code to recognize whether it's, you know, whether it's an email or a name or just long text or phone number. How can you do that on the fly as opposed to take, you know, the whole thing? And
I'm not really sure I follow that question. Actually.
okay, well, if you have, pardon?
Can you show us an example or something?
Okay, so you have a CRM and you're putting data into an edit.
Mhm.
Now, it can recognize from the data whether it's a single word or whether it's a paragraph or whether it's a phone number or a zip code or a whatever, and it formats it accordingly. Okay. Now with capital letters or down letters or spaces for the zip code, because in the UK, the zip code is formatted in a particular way. Now, at the moment, I double click on an edit. It goes in, copies it, edit, recognizes what it is and formats it correctly and pastes it back in. But because I'm having ACC issues, I was wondering, is it possible to do it as I type so I don't have to go back and recognize the edit?
Yes, that is totally doable. You just have to assign a G label to the edit control. So,
but the edit, the problem I've got is the edit is in a third program.
oh, I'm sorry. Ah, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you right now. So it's not something that you created. Oh no,
yeah,
no. So that is unless you're capturing the keyboard thing, which is with the keyboard hook, that's going to be really hard. I really not recommending you to do that. That's going to be more complex than you think. Now,
okay, and I'm not talking about abbreviations. I'm talking about you know, it can be anything that anyone types, you know,
I
into that
understand what
CRM.
you mean. Yeah, in that case, what I would do definitely is just create a hotkey script that takes care of checking what has been typed before sending it over to the next window. So it is something is keyboard capturing before sending it.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm telling you, I wouldn't recommend you that just because it is more complex than you think. And
Correct.
As I know your level, because we have been speaking and so on, I think it would be a very deep rabbit hole. How you're doing it with the double click might be the better approach for now.
Well, again, I stopped the double click. I now do a control click just because the double click was interfering with it was the program, other functions on the program.
And I'm telling you, just going with the keyword might be a little bit more tricky than you realize. So it's just to tell you that. Somebody
and that's having this conversation with you and getting your advice is it stopped me going down that rabbit hole. So thank you.
Yeah, it would be more complex than you realize in that case. But I was actually kind of like interested in answering Ben Serich. He was saying that whether AutoHotkey supports short circuiting of if statements? Yes, the answer is totally yes. Whenever you have ternary operators, and if you're using an if statement, it actually short circuits. And actually, Joe, we were just talking about that.
I think it was
a few
the
days
Friday
ago.
live call, wasn't it? That-
Can you define what you mean by short circuit?
Yeah, it is a very good. So here's the thing, and I ran into it in the most funny thing, actually running about this particular function. This function, for those, I actually published it a few days ago, or actually yesterday. It gets the default icon for any extension. So you just say, for example, AHK, and it gives you back the extension, the program that is associated with it. And these three statements here, again, they were being short circuit in a way that I was not expecting. And I got random stuff that I was like, what the heck? Now here's what I mean by that. Let me go ahead and make this V1 for everybody. Let's go ahead and say this. I have if variable, so let's go ahead and do this. If variable 1, let's name it 1, equals true. And we go step by step with it. If variable 1 is equals true, message box true. What do you think is going to happen here? When I run the code, what I would assume is that I would get this message box here. Very good. And also, I'm going to have that the variable is set to it, right? Good. Now, I'm going to have an AND statement. Now I have a variable 2 here. What do you think is going to happen here?
We don't have variable 2 defined, so it'll be nothing. So it'll be.
Well, I'm
false.
defining it. So I'm defining it right now.
Okay.
I'm defining it to be false.
Okay.
So if I do that, is variable 2 going to contain something or not?
Well, if you defined it as false, it's got to be false in it.
Okay.
No, it will
is-
not, because it short circuits after variable 1 equals true. It's done. It stops before it gets to variable 2 equals false. So it will be null or empty.
Now, this is the that's
I don't
very
understand
good.
that.
So what happens is the if statement checks for one side before checking the other one.
Okay.
Now, if this, and even though Macereth is going to the right answer, in this particular instance, it's not true, but yeah, it's the right answer. So what happens is this side is true. So the second side is going to be executed to check whether it's true or not. But there is something that happens there. This one was set to false, and this whole statement is not true anymore. And for that reason, we're never going to get a variable. So right now, even though I run my code, I'm not going to get a variable. But let me check what happens if I go outside of the variable, message box, var2, and see what happens there. You see? Now let me check if. Notice that even though the statement was not true, and as soon as I made it a string, it actually was true. But even though the statement was not true, I didn't get this message box, but the other one had some information in it. It was set. Now here's the tricky part. I'm going to make this side to true. Okay, so now both of them are true. Okay. Now I'm going to switch this one to false. And I have it false, but I'm going to make a not statement here. So I'm going to make this true. The false is going to be stored here, and then it's going to be switched to true. So both statements are true. Okay. Right now, this is what actually tricked me for real. It just, because this statement, I just made it true by switching it. I have an AND statement, and this other statement is true. So I'm expecting it to have a value in it. But something happened in between the two that variable 2 is made blank. And that was unexpected for me. And actually, I don't know if I'm the only one that found that unexpected.
So there's a couple of questions there.
Now,
Are you defining a variable? Is it the same as putting somewhere else var2 is true. And
Uh-huh.
then could you do without the colon? Is that the same?
Yeah, no,
Because-
I'm gonna give you the answer first, and then we're
Okay.
gonna go ahead and, so the answer to this is that as you're defining a variable right here, this section that says false, just, you have to think about this whole thing here as one expression that evaluates to true or false, right? Now, what happens is that as the first part of the expression is false, it short circuits there and it never reaches the variable assignment, which is what the question was all about. Does version 2, does this short circuit? Because the AND operand expects both parts of the expression to be true. And if the first one is false, then it says, I don't even have to look further because the first part is false and I need them both to be true. So it just short circuits right there. And the second part never actually executes.
Like an else if, it'll never get to the else if.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If the first one, so the point here is that you have to enclose this in a parenthesis, right?
So
To
to
make
evaluate each one at a
sure,
time.
so that make sure that this section here is evaluated as one thing, and then the second one is evaluated as a second separate thing. So it was just a matter of parentheses here that was going on, and the short circuit is the one that was causing that because this AND operand was short circuiting after the false. That's what was going on.
That
One
would
other
explain a
thing-
few issues I've had where Joe said, put everything in parentheses. And I thought, why? He didn't explain why. He just said, it's good
Do it.
practice.
It's
Just
good
do it.
practice. Yeah, this is when the good practice comes into place. And basically, not only that, is because in AutoHotkey version 1, as we were explaining, things are not really expressions all the time. So if you say
Yes.
message box, so if variable 1 equals my text, this is actually not an expression, and these quotation marks must exist in the variable for it to be true, and that's weird. That's simply just weird.
So what's the difference
So-
between putting the colon in there or not?
No, because the colon is assignment. It's not actually comparing two stuff. It's actually assigning one value to another. So this would grab this text and put it inside the variable 1.
Yes.
But without the colon, you're comparing. Is the variable 1 the same as this string? But in version 1, that is weird because now these quotation marks must be in the string. So you have to put parentheses around it to force an expression, which means that now the quotation marks don't have a meaning. It's a mess. That's why
I've been getting into this problem with the recent code. So I ended up having to use if in string to actually figure out what's going on.
Yeah. So in general, yeah.
The other thing though is I was going to say, because the original question, and Grant and I stepped out of the room, talked about short circuiting and what is that, right?
Mhm.
In the call we had, I think it was on Friday, talking about the if statement, we were saying how if you use just multiple ifs in a row, it will evaluate each one regardless of what happens to the one up above it, right? If you use an else if, it will, once it finds one, it short circuits and just jumps past, right? It doesn't continue
Exactly.
on.
Yes.
What I didn't know was the one, and I don't know if you want to show it real quickly, was with the switch command.
Yeah.
It's even shorter than that because you basically created an index off of each word is what you were kind of.
I just alluded to that. So basically, let's have a variable that has the number 1, right? And then I will do a switch statement for variable. This is the reason why I don't care about variable length anymore, because I have an auto assist that types the variables for me. So if you don't have that, yeah, of course you want the shortest variable name, but that's okay. Now here's the thing. I have case 1, case 2.
You have 3 minutes.
Yep, here we go. Message box. True. Case 2 would be message box false. Now here's the thing. This code, when I run it, if it is an else if statement, we'll do something different if I put a 2 in here, and we will see that in a second. So if var equals 1, and let's just duplicate the code, and else if var equals 2. Let's duplicate that and make it false. So in this case, in both instances, if I have number 1, as soon as the first information is correct, it does that. And this is the part where it says short circuits. It doesn't check for the next if else statement. Let's look at it. So let's run it. It stops here. It's going to check if it is true. If it is true, it's going to jump to message box true, which is what I wanted to do. And now it jumps. It doesn't take a look at, it doesn't make any checks anymore. The same is going to happen here. It is just going to jump to the case number 1. It's going to show my message box true. Good, perfect. Now, if it is true, if it is the second option, this is where they differ. This is where they act a little bit differently. So if it is 2 right here, the first check is performed, is not true, and then it checks the second one. Here we go. It checked the first one, it was not true, jumps to the second one, that's it. If it is a switch statement, it doesn't even check for number 1. It doesn't even try it. It just simply jumps straight into 2. You see that? So it doesn't even check the other cases. It goes straight to the case. It is using the value of that variable as if it was a label
index.
or an index, and it jumps straight into it. Okay, so in some situations, and this is, I rather most of the time use a switch statement instead of this if else. The only situation when this will not work is if you're going to be performing different actions, like if in string var test, or else if regex match, if you're using functions to determine the value.
Yeah.
So to actually go ahead and work on the value, and the function is going to return a specific value. So you're not looking at the value of the variable itself, but rather using a function to go ahead and do that. Switch statements do not work for that, because you cannot say if in string, something like that. You cannot do this in a switch statement. That doesn't work.
But
So it's just a value. It's got to have a value. So
It has to have a specific value assigned to it. You cannot compute the value.
so can you give, for instance, if
We're out
you,
of time here.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we will actually take a look at that later on, but basically that was something that we were working on, and that was an explanation as to the
Well, I
difference
want to
between the
real
two.
quickly just add, so Dimitri made a joke about we're saving 0.00005 seconds, right? However, if the evaluations themselves had very complex things, right? The whole point about short circuiting, right, can, if each of these things, matter, can really change, and you should, for the else if, you should put your most common one first. So the first check it does, that's the most likely one, right? It matters. On the switch statement, it's irrelevant, right? Like, because it's
Exactly. And those 0.00055 seconds, it is that for that one thing, but
Right.
imagine doing that millions of times in a database, or millions of queries to an API. Then that number becomes 1 hour. That's the problem with it.
all right. So let me
That's what happens.
stop the recording here, and we'll